She'll be happy.
We have a full house here, and the clock says that it is noon. So I will call this meeting to order. And Mr. Cole, if you would note that all the commissioners are present.
So noted.
First thing on your agenda is an approval of the minutes that were mailed to you, minutes for October 17th, 2019. Take a motion, or if there are any corrections, make note of those, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now for our first official action, we have Resolution 1404, a resolution requesting City Council approval of the engagement of Culture and Justice to provide audit services to the Knoxville Utilities Board for a 3-year term beginning with audits to be performed in 2020. Okay?
Commissioners, the KUB charter requires that the board hire an independent auditor to audit our financial records, and once that's approved, it then goes to City Council for further approval. I'd like to recognize our controller, Chris Hood, for a presentation about this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Willis, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Today, I bring you a recommendation from the Board's Audit and Finance Committee to hire Culture and Justice as independent auditor for Knoxville Utilities Board upon subsequent approval by City Council. Culture and Justice recently completed a 5-year tenure as KUB's auditor. Based upon the professionalism exhibited by the firm, the Board's Audit and Finance Committee asked Culture and Justice for a 3-year proposal for additional services. Culture and Justice complied with such proposal. When reviewing the proposal, the committee noted the professionalism of the firm, the knowledge that they have of KUB's systems and our finances, and also the fee structure that was provided. Take a look here real quick at the fee structure. Current year, on the far side of the chart, $157,000 roughly. You note that the fee structure is virtually unchanged the entire 3-year process. In total, $1,900 additional fees in year 3 of the proposal. This is very competitive in the market today, and based on the proposal, the committee would like to recommend to the full board that we do hire Culture and Justice for an additional 3-year term. The resolution that's before you today is a request of this board and also a request of City Council to approve Culture and Justice for this 3-year term for audits beginning in 2020 and lasting through 2020, 2021, and 2022. Upon approval by this board and City Council, KUB would then engage in a contract audit with Culture and Justice.
So the way our bylaws are written, so this is the first 5 year plus 3 total 8, and then we have to rebid it. Is that the way it's structured right now?
We would not have to rebid it. We would have to rebid it after the 3-year term.
Right.
We can go back with the same auditor, and historically we have kept an auditor 8 to 11 years. So the auditor before Culture and Justice was 8 years. Before that, it was an 11-year term. So this would be good for 3 years, though.
Okay, but we can't re-engage them?
We can re-engage them if we so like.
Okay.
It is a professional service, so under state law, it does not have to be competitively bid.
Yeah, some organizations I'm involved with, just, they have to at some point rebid and then go with a different auditor. So if it's a total of 10 years, then we have to get another auditor in terms of checks and balances. So I didn't know if our policy said that we had to get a new auditor and they weren't able to rebid.
It is not a firm policy, but it is a practice.
It is a practice. Okay.
Yeah. So, question?
All right, thank you, Chris. I need a motion and a second for Resolution 1404 on first and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this resolution? All right, seeing none, Mr. Cole, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Askew?
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert?
Aye.
Commissioner Cannell?
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson-Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Small?
Aye.
Commissioner Warden?
Aye.
Resolution 1404 has passed.
All right, next on our agenda is resolution number 1405, a resolution authorizing the execution of a natural gas supply contract with Tenergy Corporation and Energy Acquisition Corporation for a term of up to 31 years. Okay?
Commissioners, the board has previously given us permission and guidelines on how we procure and secure gas for our customers. Because of that, those guidelines, we're able to secure gas at a very cost-effective and efficient way of doing that. What we're proposing today is a new term that will allow us to get a significant discount on gas for our customers. And I want to ask Mike Bowen, the director, or vice president, sorry, of utility management, to give you the details of what we're talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Commissioners, we're here today to talk about a long-term gas supply contract that's fairly unusual. So let me start out by talking about how we have historically purchased our natural gas. Most of our gas is bought from suppliers and marketers. Suppliers being like Conoco, BP, Shell are three of the larger ones of our suppliers. Those contracts are entered into, and our purchases are based upon what our daily needs are, and whether it's to be injected in storage or burned here. So we enter into daily arrangements, we enter monthly arrangements, seasonal arrangements, year-round arrangements. So there's a mixture of contracts that we have in terms we have with our suppliers. Generally speaking, our contracts will be somewhere between 1 and 3 years in terms, with our ability to flex our volumes, taking on those contracts on any given day or any given month. The board has previously granted us, gosh, it was almost 20 years ago now, authority and the outlines to say this is the parameters under which we can contract as a gas supply group. And that ability to contract has a term limitation of 6 years. So anything over 6 years, we would have to come to the board to get approval, and that's what we're seeking here today. Now, the proposed contract, before I do that, let me talk about the supplier that we're seeking a contract to enter into. The supplier is Tenergy Corporation. Tenergy is formed by 3 natural gas utilities, municipal natural gas utilities in West Tennessee, Jackson, Humboldt, and Brownsville. You've probably heard of Jackson, the others maybe not, but in all of them are fairly small suppliers, but they took advantage of, collectively, they took advantage of Tennessee law provisions that allow them to incorporate a energy acquisition corporation. The state law allows energy acquisition corporations to have various features that allow them to enter into long-term contracts, allows them to issue bonds, and do other duties. So they formed an energy acquisition corporation back in the late 1990s. Since that time, they have entered into a number of sales arrangements and transactions with a lot of people you may know, like Memphis Light Gas and Water, Huntsville Utilities Board, Middle Tennessee Natural Gas, and maybe even some of our even more local peers. The way Tenergy does their business is they enter into prepay arrangements with suppliers. So they would issue bonds, to pre-purchase their natural gas from the supplier, and then turn around and sell that gas to whoever they contracts with them for the gas supply. That prepay really is, in the whole transaction, is a function of interest rates. They take advantage of interest rates to achieve ultimately a fairly significant amount of savings. It does require, however, a long-term contract to achieve the savings. It also requires a long-term purchase commitment as well. So that thing's going to do on me here.
Should have used electricity.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go.
You're good. You don't even have to be all the way over.
All right, so the proposed contract, it's up to a 31-year contract term. Really, I think we're both shooting for around a 30-year contract term in order to get the economics right. There's a little bit of flexibility in there based upon the timing issues associated with actually getting everything lined up. The purchase commitment that we're committing to for that period of time is 2,000 decatherms a day. To put that in perspective, that's about 10% of our average purchases. That volume actually goes up during the winter and it goes down during the summer, so it sort of matches our load profile, but overall it's about 10% of our purchases, what we're talking about here. The discount is significant. 30 cents a decatherm is first period discount, and if you compare that to today's market prices, which is around $2.50, you're looking at a discount, a fairly sizable discount that'll accrue to our customers as getting into this transaction. And as is noted here, the savings both on an annual basis and over the term of the contract is very significant as well. This proposed contract was talked about with the Audit and Finance Committee and has been discussed thoroughly. So we prepared Resolution 1405 to give the authority for us to enter into the gas supply contract with Tenergy for a term of up to 31 years for a volume of 2,800 decatherms a day, and it requires a minimum benefit to us of 30-cent discount to the market price of gas. It also sunsets, this authority sunsets in June. The contract really is a function of them being able to achieve the economics in the marketplace. And if it doesn't achieve the economics in the marketplace over the next 6 months, then your authority, this resolution will terminate. So with that, I'll be happy to answer your questions.
How long has Tenergy been in business?
About 20 years,
And have we ever purchased from them before?
we have not.
What is their volume as opposed to other suppliers that we use?
You know, honestly, I'm not sure I could tell you, but they sell a lot of gas to a lot of people.
But do they sell it on these long-term contracts, or are there shorter-term contracts?
No, they are not a traditional supplier that all of our other suppliers are. This is a company that's taken advantage of some unique purchasing opportunities.
They've been executing these contracts for many years with various other municipalities in the state.
Of which we're very familiar with,
Yeah.
talking to them.
Does their pipeline tie into the existing pipelines that we use?
They are able to source gas from their suppliers on pipelines that we use.
Which, does it go to the East Tennessee Natural, the one that we have to issue with?
It is. The gas we will be buying from them is actually on Tennessee Gas Pipeline, which is this upstream pipeline from East Tennessee, sourcing gas specifically out of South Texas is where this gas will be coming from. And they, all three of those companies we talked about, they're all natural gas utility, municipal gas, natural gas utility, just like us, and have the same issue. They will be procuring some of their own natural gas as part of this proposed transaction whenever they go to market with us. So that's more details.
And let me make sure I understand your comment about the authority to sign the contract expiring in June 2020.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that at our option or at their option?
That's your authority granting us the authority to execute the contract. If this deal hasn't been consummated by June 30th, then your authority grant to us expires.
All right.
You can't get a deal
That-
worked out.
I thought that was what you were saying,
Yes.
but then the comment
sorry.
about if savings have not,
Well, they won't enter into a contract to offer us the same minimum savings unless they can get a deal done in the market.
Correct.
all
And
right.
that may take a little
Okay,
bit
all
of
right, now I
time.
understand what you're saying. All right, thank you.
So the 30 cents per decatherm that we're purchasing is only 10% of what our required use would be, right?
Yes,
So we will
yes, sir.
still have contracts with other folks.
Absolutely.
If they give us such a great discount, do we have the opportunity then to purchase more for them at a lower rate than our other suppliers?
Well, to some extent, we're still sticking our toe in the market.
Okay.
That other fellow distributors have already, been there ahead of us. We'll learn from this. Tenergy would tell you and have told us the same way. They themselves do these sort of transactions with other people that they could have done themselves. There's something to be said for varying the the number of deals and varying the geography and varying the counterparty. So maybe we might go back with another contract with them. It might be with another firm that is in the same type business as them. So, yeah, we'll get our feet wet here, make sure everything we know, learn from it, and it's very possible we'll be back in a year or so.
Just a comment, when we consider this at finance, one of the reasons I'm in favor of it is because it is such a small part of what we do. We're always concerned in long-term contracts. If technology changed dramatically, would we be locked into a purchase of something that we really didn't need? But we'll be able to manage, if a new technology came along, which I can't imagine, but if a new technology came along that would replace our demand for gas, we still have a lot of flexibility. We have almost maximum flexibility through our short-term contracts to manage that.
I think as in most things, we're very conservative with our initial approach here.
Do other companies, the Memphis Gas and Light, do you know if they enter into these contracts that for 50% of their or more of
Yes,
their?
different utilities have a different threshold at which they feel unease. And there are a number of utilities that are at least that high, and some of them much higher than that on their usage of this mechanism to purchase natural gas.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mike. All right, we need a motion and a second on Resolution 1405 on first and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this resolution?
Could I comment on it?
Sure.
I think that was a great presentation, and on the surface, it looks like a smart move. My comment is brief because in the discussion that you all engaged in, I heard nothing about how the gas was sourced. And by that I mean, did it come from fracked fields? If the decision to make this purchase is based solely on financial considerations, then KUB is not considering the climate impact or the impact on water supplies and farms in other areas. So, hey, this may be a great idea. I'm not saying don't do it or anything, but it seems to me it would, I as a ratepayer, and I think other KUB ratepayers would be happy to hear that kind of conversation happen when you're deliberating this issue. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. Culver, will you call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Askew,
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Fennell,
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Small,
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1405 has passed on its first and final reading.
All right, next on our agenda is Resolution 1406, a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement to convey gas facilities Emory Vista subdivision in Anderson County, Tennessee with Powell Clinch Utility District. Okay?
Yeah, Commissioners, we have been in contact and communication with our friends to the north of us at Powell Clinch Utility District about a transfer of natural gas customers that are located in Anderson County. I introduced Jamie Davis, Director of Grid and Mod, to go over the details of that transaction.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. From time to time, as we work with our neighboring utilities, there are opportunities that make good sense to convey the facilities that Mr. Bowles talked about. We're talking about today a small subdivision up in, I guess we would call it northwest of our service territory, kind of right in the Carnes community, right at the Anderson County line, as you can kind of see in the map to your left. This is a subdivision right off Emory Road that you can see where the Anderson-Knox County line comes through that subdivision. That in the early 2000s, when this subdivision was developed, we extended our gas main and served this particular subdivision outside of what would be our traditional service territory. In discussions with Powell Clinch, we feel like transferring this subdivision and the subsequent customers and facilities to them really helps us to better define our service boundaries. We think that's smart operationally. And as we do with everything, we will communicate with our customers well in advance. From a financial perspective, our rates are very, very similar. We really don't think the customers will notice anything perhaps other than the color of the envelope they get, every month in that particular regard. So again, for your consideration today is Resolution 1406, which will authorize President CEO to convey those facilities and the service rights for these customers. Also authorizes President CEO to execute the necessary documents and take any actions to effectuate that transaction.
Did we sell this block to them, or is this?
We will ultimately, we will receive payment for the assets in which we have, that we're conveying to them.
Okay. So you'll come back to us with an assessment of the assets that we're selling?
No, we know that book value. It's
Okay.
part of the contract that ultimately that Mr. Bowles will execute. Approximately $82,000 worth of net plan that's on the books right now.
So we are giving Anderson County 100 customers of gas, right? Power clinics, I'm sorry, power clinics. Is there a problem with us servicing them? I'm just trying to figure out, we're basically giving away 100 customers.
A little bit of background, a few months ago, we found power clinics coming into Knox County.
So we're not allowed to?
So, well, part of that agreement was we wanted all the line to be Knox County, Anderson County line.
Okay.
And so, as part of that agreement, we'll sell them what's over the Anderson County line. At the same time, we'll get back all the stuff on the Knox County side. So that's ultimately what this is illegal coming from.
Okay,
Yes,
that makes sense.
that kind of makes the border really defined. There's no question going forward on what side of the line you serve.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. We need a motion and a second on Resolution 1406, and this will be a first and final reading. So moved.
Second.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this resolution? Seeing none, Mr. Coley, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1406 is passed on first and final reading.
All right, President, report
Yep.
today?
Commissioners, a few months ago, we presented to you that three-year rate discussion and our recommendation for the next 3 years. Part of that, that is much bigger of a 10-year financial plan. Last month, everyone talked about the capital programs we've done with that. Today, I'd like to introduce Mark Walker, talk about the financial side of the next 10 years and what we're looking at where we want to head.
Commissioners, as Mr. Bowles said, a few months ago, I was up here and we gave a preview of our rate forecast for the next 3 years. And that 3-year rate forecast is part of a much larger financial plan for each of our utility systems. Today, I wanted to take a few minutes and give you an overview of those long-range financial plans for each of the utility systems. So we'll look again at the 3-year rate forecast. We'll look at the estimated rate forecast beyond the 3 years. And we'll also look at our debt usage over the next 10 years as well. So I think you'll find it does bring good news for our customers on several fronts. But it really all begins with our blueprint. That is the foundation of when we put our long-range plans together. It's the filter by which we sort of run through all our projects and the financing of those projects. A few weeks ago, I thought Mintha put it really well at the building ceremony, that it is our North Star. And I thought that was aptly put. So the O&M and capital expenditures in our long-range plan and the funding of those expenditures, staff truly believes that they are in support of the vision the board has laid out to provide safe, reliable, and affordable services for our customers. So a real high-level look at that 10-year plan. First and foremost, we remain committed to funding Century 2 and our other key capital programs, including water plant resiliency and grid modernization. We've made some modifications to them based upon some efficiencies and having been in Century 2 a long time, but still we remain fully committed to those programs to be able to provide safe and reliable service to our customers. A couple of key milestones will occur in the next 2 fiscal years. One of those is upon us in a few months, and that's when we'll complete our deployment of advanced meters for all our residential and business customers. And with that, provides future efficiencies and cost savings for our customers One on power restoration. We'll know more information. We'll know it sooner. And that combined with our new outage management system will allow us to put people back in service quicker. The efficiencies of the meters, being able to have all that data, we now have more flexible rate offerings we'll be able to provide to our customers, and the time of use rates that we'll be piloting and that we'll ask the board to consider next spring is a chief example or a prime example of that. Another major milestone will be with the completion of the consent decree in 2021. Been going on a long time. We've spent a lot of money on that, and we've made a lot of progress. But the last of those projects will be completed in June of 2021. And it's significant for our customers. Not only is that the last project, but after that, capital requirements for wastewater begin to decline, and allows us to have lower rate increases in the future, and also bring down the debt in wastewater as well, which is also a target. We'll continue to have a balanced funding plan, rates, debt, supplemented by cost savings and revenue from new customer growth, all that together to help fund the plans. I do want to mention that in these long-range plans, we've been able to identify some rather significant cost savings on O&M and also on capital, and some future capital efficiencies that have enabled us to have a lower level of rate increases than what we previously forecast, and also to bring the debt down as well. So I think that is good news. To revisit the message that we shared with the board in August on our rate forecast for the next 3 years, I think it's probably worth repeating. No electric rate increases for the next 2 years. So no electric rate increases in 2020 and 2021. None for gas over the whole 3-year period. Wastewater has been significantly reduced. We were projecting 3.5% per year. For the next 3 years, that's now down to 2.25%. So there's some savings there. On the basic service charges, they'll remain unchanged from their current levels for the next 3 years, and honestly probably beyond that as we look forward. And then again, we're very excited about the pilot time of use rates for our residential and business customers. We're currently finishing up on the rate structures for those, how they'll look like, and we'll be sharing that with the board probably at the January board meeting on that. So you'll get a preview of that before you're asked to vote next spring. And we've shared this before too, just comparing what the new forecast on rate increases is compared to the prior forecast. And again, you can see electric. We did look very hard at being able to reduce or eliminate that third, or that 1% electric rate increase, which would be in FY23. We're not able to do that. There are obviously needs in Century 2 for the electric system. We weren't able to reduce or eliminate that. We're able to eliminate, again, all the gas rate increases. Water stayed the same. Water is our tightest financial plan. We do have significant capital needs, in particular for some water plant resiliency projects over the next couple of years. So those rate increases stayed the same as we previously forecast. Wastewater, I mentioned that we were able to reduce those. So in total, over the next 3 years, the residential bill, what we call savings compared to the prior forecast, I think it's significant at $150, and that continues to be good news for our customers. Impact of those increases on our monthly bills, you can see for water and wastewater, and let me point out that this is based upon average monthly usage for those customers. Excuse me. I get about halfway through and the voice begins to go these days, like it's getting older. But you can see the impacts based on average usage. So for our residential water customers, $1.50, wastewater $1.50 also. Same for the following year, and then in year 3, $1.50, and then $1 for electric. So if I use more than average, my increase would be a little bit higher than that. If I use less than average, it's going to be a little bit less than that. Because unlike the past, when those were fixed amounts, for all residential customers, that's not the case here. Does that make sense? Okay. Now let's talk about debt. In addition to trying to lower our rate increases over time, it's also, I think, important that we look at our debt levels and do our best to manage those debt levels and bring them down when we can. We've talked a lot about wastewater in the past, and sure enough, there is a decent amount of debt there, of course. But we're also looking at our other systems too and trying to moderate our usage of debt for those systems. So in our new 10-year plan, we are able to make some headway in that. Actually, if you add all that up, we have $177 million less in debt in this plan compared to last year's plan. The reductions are primarily in electric and wastewater, and they are made possible because of some reductions that we did in our capital plans for electric and wastewater because of savings and because of capital efficiencies going forward. And I just want to reiterate, with these reductions, that does not mean that we are pulling back or doing less work or taking the foot off the accelerator of Century 2. It's just simply being able to reflect savings and efficiencies. So, John, I have you hold my water. I'll do it. Carry my water. But if you look at, let's look at the specific systems on the debt. For electric, currently we have $322 million in outstanding electric bonds. 5 years from now, it'll be $330 million. So a slight increase over that period of time, but then it's really going to drop. By 2029, we're forecasting to be at $265 million. And you can see how the debt ratio, which basically measures your utility system assets in service, in this case for the electric system, how are they funded? And we're driving that down close to about 33% in 10 years. So that's making a lot of progress. If you look at the 10-year capital plan for electric, it's about $650 million. Less than 20% of that is funded by debt over the next 10 years. On natural gas, we're currently at $115 million. That's going to drop down to $93 million, and you can see how the debt ratio will also drop as well. Make a point about the debt, really for all of our systems, maybe gas is an exception, that we are above or well above the median levels for system utilities that are AA rated. So, excuse me, I think it's important that we try to moderate that and bring that down somewhat over time. I don't think our bond rating's in jeopardy, but it's this whole balanced picture of stewardship. It's a combination of rates and debt, and I think trying to moderate that somewhat is important. We look at water and wastewater. For water, we currently have $193 million in outstanding debt. I mentioned that our water plan is the tightest, so those significant capital needs, we are going to be issuing more debt. We'll be at $238 million in &24, and then it begins to stabilize, just a very slight increase over the last 5 years, and then you see the debt ratio going down, 51 down to 41%. And wastewater, though the numbers may not be as dramatic, I think it may be the most noteworthy. To put that in perspective, if you go back to 2005 when the consent decree started, our outstanding wastewater debt was about $50 million, and this debt ratio was about 25% or even less. Today you can see where it is. So I think it is imperative that we try to, because there's a lot of interest expense that you're not seeing here associated with that debt up in the $300 million plus range. So it is important for both current and future generations of our customers to try to moderate that. And we are going to be making some headway on that. I know it's not too dramatic, but getting that down to $475 million, below that $500 million threshold in the next 10 years is, to me, noteworthy, and I think it's important. And really driving that debt ratio down, we've committed to the board to get that to 50% by 2028, and we're on track to do that. And I've told my staff I'm not leaving KUB until we achieve all these things. There's some reverse psychology there. That
Make that happen real fast.
that'll incent them to work harder to get those down. Before we look at the sort of a graphical analysis of each of the 10-year plans for each system, I just wanted to share with you, you've seen this before, the key assumptions and indicators that really are reflected in each system's long-range financial plan. You see the customer growth, various levels, the energy is going to be higher. I'll say that those are modest numbers. We certainly hope to do better than that. But I think it's being pretty conservative, which is okay for a financial model. Our annual use for residential customers on a per capita basis, we've seen those declines for years, and we think we'll probably continue to see them as appliances continue to be more efficient, conservation, various means. So it is prudent to reflect that in your financial models. Interest rate on new debt, 4 to 5%. That's probably a little conservative given current market conditions, but again, over a 10-year period, a lot of things can happen. Our term of new debt, 30 years over, for all systems over the 10-year period. That's how we'll amortize the debt, the new debt that we issue. I do want to point out on the debt ratios, we do have targets, of course. This is the short term. This is really what we have today. But in our plan to reduce those levels, in the last 5 years, this really becomes our targets. And this is what we want to achieve on that. I will mention that we will have a significant refinancing opportunity probably in February of 2020. I think we'll have about $135 million in bonds that we can refinance, and that's over 10% of what we currently have outstanding, so that'll certainly help all of our plans, and I think the majority of that is actually in wastewater, so that's a good thing. So more to come on that here in the next couple of months. So looking at each of the 4 systems, we'll start with electric. And this summarizes basically to some degree what we've already talked about, but 10-year capital, $653 million. Revenue will fund over 80% of that, so 10-year bonds is $108 million. You can see how that plays out over the course of the 10 years, with the majority of that being sold in the first 5 years. The rate increases, of course, none, then that 1%. We are, at this point, projecting a 1% annual, a need for a 1% annual increase in the outer years of the plan, beginning in 2024. That would be about $1 on the average monthly bill. Now, some potential good news is, as you see our debt service coverages, which is the main indicator Moody's and Standard & Poor's looks at when they rate our bonds, it's really beginning, after barely meeting our targets, we really begin to have some strong performance in the outer years. So that may give us some flexibility once we reach that point in time and doing something with some rate increases there, and then maybe using a little bit more of that debt flexibility that we'll have. So as we're talking about electric rates, how do they compare? This is a current snapshot when we compare them to the big 8 TVA utilities, the 8 largest TVA distributors. We're sort of middle of the pack right now with average monthly bill of $110 based upon 1,000 kilowatt hours of usage. And of course, if we have no increases for the next couple of years, that may help our competitive position. Memphis is desperately trying to get rate increases approved through their city council to help with their infrastructure issues in their city's territory. Huntsville's in the middle of a 5-year rate program. And then Chattanooga, I think, has also talked about a rate increase in the next year or so. So nobody stays static, and but we're pleased, again, not to have any for the next 2 years. We also compare, just to give you a review of how we compare nationally, residential electric rates. This is for the time period January through July of 2019. It does show the average cost of residential power by state. The actual national average is 13 cents per kilowatt hour, and we were 10.9 cents over that period of time. Looking at the gas plan, really a lot of flexibility in our gas plan, which is good news. We have a $255 million capital program over the next 10 years. About 20% of that will be funded by debt, so not a whole lot of debt usage. $16 million in the first 5 years. It actually picks up a little bit in the last 5 years. The debt ratio declines, and then you see the rate increases. One thing I'll point out is that with the strong debt service coverage and the debt flexibility that we have, My guess is, based upon what we currently have projected to spend in investments, that some of those rate increases just won't happen. They won't be needed as well. So I think that's good news for our gas customers over the long term. Looking at how our residential gas rates compare to our local, other local providers in the get gas off East Tennessee Natural Gas Pipeline in the region. Again, competitive. We're usually all bunched up here together, so you can see that's still the case at a $58 monthly bill. Oak Ridge actually dropped down somewhat in our last comparison. I'm not sure exactly why that is. So again, competitive, and with no increases on the horizon, that will help. Another thing is, as Mike talked about, really all of these companies have been participating in these longer term purchase contracts over the years. So they have those discounts reflected in these monthly bill comparisons, and we don't currently have that. So we've been able to hold our own with them, even with them having that advantage, and now we'll be able to reflect that as well. So that's good. For the water plan, again, probably our overall tightest plan. We have $354 million in total capital over the next 10 years. 40% debt, 60% revenue. Again, a little bit higher, a little bit more on the debt on the front end of the plan in the first 5 years. You can see what we're projecting in rate increases. We talked about the next 3 years being 5% annually. I do expect that the plan will continue to be the 5% annual increase. We think we might be able to come off a little bit of that right now in the last 3 years, but I think we probably need to be anticipating a 5% annual increase in water rates. Looking at how our water rates compare, this is a comparison to the local utility districts that surround us. Our average monthly bill for 3,700 gallons of water use is right around $28 right now. So we'll add about $4.50 to that over the next 3 years. My guess is Northeast Knox and West Knox will probably have some increases over that period of time too. And you can see there's quite a bit of gap between us and the two highest cost providers in the area, Knox Chapman and Hallsdale Power.
Mark, help me understand the
Yes, sir.
raising rates 15% over 3 years. Help me understand the need. I mean, obviously we have infrastructure, a lot of capital expenses. What are the, is that driving it?
Well, you have obviously your capital, and you have your maintenance needs as well, to do maintenance on your water system, all combined. But the primary driver is the capital intensity of the water system. Replacing, I guess, 1% of our pipe per year on that, and continuing to get galvanized pipe out of the system to address, make sure that's the one more prone to leaks. And then the water plant resiliency initiative. We have a new filter project at MBW that is going to be $40 million plus that we're getting ready to undertake. That is really the significant capital investment in the coming years for the water system. So whereas the other systems have Century 2, water really has almost dual significant capital initiatives. One is the pipe replacement program for the distribution system. That's really part of the Century 2. The other is the water plant resiliency, which over the 10 to 12 year period that we are making those investments is $120, $130 million. So when you layer that on top of the water system Century 2, that's where you get the need for the 5% annual rate increase for sure. Now the wastewater. 10 years, $415 million capital program. That's probably our lowest 10-year capital number for wastewater since we began the consent decree. Good news is that debt will only fund 32% of that $415 million. And that as a result, you can see what we're going to issue, what we're going to pay back, and we'd end up at the $475 million and the debt ratio coming down. Good news for wastewater is the rate increases are, in the past they've been 5% as they've been actually coming down over time. Now they're 2.25, then they would go to 2%, and our target is to get them to 1% over time.
Regarding the water, it's nice to see that we're doing these improvements and we're still lower than other people in the area as far as our rates. Our customers like Fresenius who come here for the quality of the water, do they comment on these projected increases, or do they, I mean, is it going to impact people like them coming here to any significant extent, because we're still we're not higher than anybody?
It will have an impact on Fresenius's bills, just like it will everyone else, of course. But when they first came here, we shared with them what our long-term plans were. They were aware, in particular, of course, they have a lot of wastewater flow coming back in as well as water usage. They were aware of the consent decree. The big selling point for Fresenius was the quality of the water and their particular processes. Of course, they're one example of a large commercial industrial water wastewater users. There are others. Through our key accounts group, we share these projections with them, so they are not surprised by where we're going on this. And you know, actually, from what we've shown them in the past, the fact that we're now able, in particular on wastewater, to reduce those, it's actually good news for them. So that's important on wastewater. Our debt service coverage is pretty good as well on that. And again, our goal is to get it here because we know where we are today. An average monthly bill of $66 for a residential wastewater customer. So this is really where maybe more than, I would say more than the other systems, but the balance factor really comes in. We'd like to be able to freeze that as much as we can, or not have any more rate increases, but if you do that, this isn't going to happen. So this goes hand in hand, and I'm really pleased that we're able to some extent, achieve both. Get that rate increase down as much as possible and get the debt down too. So if we don't get the debt down, that cost burden just continues to grow and grow for future generations of wastewater customers in this instance.
Question on that. So, and it's my understanding with the consent decree, this is going to end in 2021
Yes,
with
sir.
our final project. Some of this consent decree is kind of a mystery. The court presides over it.
It was a court order. Court order based with the Department of Justice, other parties, Tennessee Clean Water Network, City of Knoxville, EPA.
So it was a deal that was struck at that point. I guess my question is it possible we get to 2021 and there's a whole new set of requirements that could come at us from the court? Or does the court release us at 2021?
There would be a release process. We actually have a team that has been put together to shepherd that whole process as we draw closer to that, and they'll work closely with our counsel on that. The idea of another one following up, I mean, God forbid, and hopefully not, and we pray that it won't happen, and it won't. It shouldn't happen. It should not happen. We have been doing everything right. We are the textbook case of how to do it right. We are consistently cited by EPA as you all have been remarkable, and we're actually held up to others as this is how you implement and carry out the requirements of a consent decree. So we certainly aren't anticipating any type of continuation of an order on that. We have done all the plant work that needed to be done, and plus we've committed to the same level of pipe replacement that we've been doing for the last 12 years will continue after the consent decree. So we're still going to be investing $30 to $40 million a year in total in our wastewater system. It's just not going to be 60, 70 million per year as it has been in the past when you had specifically all the storage and treatment plant projects as part of the CD.
And I was going to go back to that because of your comment about the, you know, without these rates and without the additional bonds that we are showing out there, that maintenance won't happen. So we've committed to that maintenance.
Yes, we have.
So to that extent, that's not an option for us. That maintenance and that continuation has to happen or we're putting ourselves in some dangerous territory as far as.
Now, if we collectively decided after 2021, we're done, this 2% replacement of the system, we're gonna do 15% of that every year, we're gonna do 5 miles of replacement. Well, then we might be able to do stuff here. We'll maybe eliminate those and achieve more there, but we don't wanna do that because we know, we're guaranteeing ourselves that another order will be coming and not good. So,
John, a new lawsuit would essentially have to be filed.
Correct, that's correct.
Because that order concluded the
That's
previous
self-contained.
Yes.
litigation.
Okay, I just didn't know if the goalpost could be moved on us at 2021 and we could be right back in.
Somebody-
Unless there's another suit. Okay, thank you.
so really to close out, the idea today was, we'd already really talked about the rates over the next 3 years, so to really reiterate that message. And then look at where we saw rates going for the other 6 to 7 years of the plan. But really one of the chief things to accomplish today was to talk about the debt and really bring the board up to speed on where we see the debt going over the next 10 years, which I think is in a positive direction. And I think the systems are going to remain financially sound, and it's good that we'll be able to help our customers out by being able to lower the level of rate increases as well. So the next time you'll hear about the rates will be, I don't know if we'll need both of these meetings, commissioners, but in one of the January, February meeting, we'll be coming back and talk specifically about some of the rate structure changes that will be part of the May, June decisions by the board. In particular, we'll show you the time of use rate structures, and there's a couple of other things we're going to be doing on our electric business rates that we'll share with you at that time. And then you can see how it'll play out. You're used to that schedule. We get to April and we'll have like a 3+ hour meeting on all this, which is a great joy. And then the official action. So apologize for my voice. I'm getting older, I guess, but I'll be happy to answer any of the questions you might have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we are excited to be partnering with TV on a smart thermostat pilot project with our customers. I can bring Mike Bolin back up to give you the details of that program.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Mark's getting older, he's like Methuselah up here, I guess. So I am excited to talk about this, and hopefully y'all will be excited as we are. Earlier this month, in partnership with TVA, TVA came to us and wanted to launch a smart thermostat pilot. Under this pilot program, eligible participating customers would have a professionally installed smart thermostat installed in their home at no charge. In return for that, TVA is granted the opportunity to adjust the customer's thermostats up to 18 times a year by 1 to 4 degrees during peak day events. The whole purpose of this pilot program is to help TVA and us adjust our peak demands, lower our peak demands. Peak demands on TVA system is what drives their capital investments in generation facilities. It's also the thing that drives their costs. The higher the peak demand is, the more inefficient generation units they have to turn on, and the more high-priced power they have to buy. So a mechanism that allows TVA to control their demand is good for TVA, it's good for everybody that buys power from TVA, it's good for KUB and all of our customers, because the reason TVA picked us as a potential place to have this pilot program was because our peak on our system is consistent with TVA's peak. In other words, if they help us with our peak, they're helping them with their peak. So it's a good savings all the way around. The pilot is a first come, first served basis pilot. The plan is to install 2,000 of these free smart thermostats around the service territory, and the pilot is supposed to run for 2 years. Now, eligibility requirements. First of all, you got to have residential electric service with KUB. This is KUB specific pilot program, and only for our electrical customers. Second thing is you have to have electric heat. TVA can't manage their system peak if they're trying to manage your gas furnace. So you got to have electric heat in your house as well. You have to have Wi-Fi service in your house. In order for TVA to adjust your thermostat, they have to have access to the thermostat remotely to adjust it. You have to have an advanced meter already installed in your house. Most houses in our service area now already have that, but some of them don't. And in fact, since TVA's launched this program, we've already come across several customers that they got signed up for the program that didn't have the advanced meters, we're now having to go install them. So even though it's a small population, it is occurring. The next thing is you have to have completed an E-score audit. If you think what TVA is trying to get out of this, they're trying to get a reduction of load during peak loading days. If you have a house that's fairly inefficient and they adjust your thermostat down by 2 or 3 degrees, 15 minutes later, your heat will come back on, right? So they're looking for houses that are fairly tight insulation so that you, as the owner occupying the house, you won't even notice it 2 or 3 degrees on a few hours on an event. So they're looking for efficient houses. And specifically, they have a guideline there of a minimum of 6 on installation and air sealing. Now, since this program's been launched, and some of you any of you that may have previously got an E-score audit with TVA, they have already reached out and started sending letters. A lot of people's already asked me about it. If you've had an audit, you may have gotten these letters. TVA is targeting the previous E-score participants with its offering at this point. I would say also that if you're a renter and you qualify for this, both the renter and the owner have to sign up the participation agreement. We've made it a point to make sure our low-income customers have availability of this program as well. We provided our keen customers and our rounded up customers that have had weatherization done on their houses. We provide those lists to TVA for them to make the same offer to them. Now, I'm also pleased to say that TVA has got behind the ball a little bit on this. They had anticipated launching this program a couple of months ago so that they'd be able to actually use this on some winter weather this winter. So they haven't got as many participants up and running as fast as they wanted. So they have approached us about us putting it on our website and making sure everybody is open and aware of it and have the opportunity to participate as opposed to just directing it towards their former E-score participants only. I suspect once their communication folks and our communication folks finish, I would hope by the first part of December, you'll see on our website information globally available. If a customer hasn't done an E-score evaluation but still wants to participate, they probably need to have TVA either perform an E-score audit or demonstrate to TVA that their house is energy efficient so that TVA can gain value out of the house actually reducing load during an event. So we're pretty excited about it. It's a win for the customers. Get the free smart thermostats to use to lower their bills. I've got 2 smart thermostats myself. They're Nest, they're not KUB, but it's wonderful. It's a great deal having a smart thermostat. So good for TVA, good for us, good for the customers. We're thrilled about it, and this is taking advantage of some technology out there. Hopefully TVA will find this pilot to be successful and then extend it to a broader base throughout the valley so that all of us can benefit from the smart technology. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
So as I think about all of the requirements, and I think about our low to moderate income, and when you have to have Wi-Fi and some of those other things, if you're a renter, I think sometimes we may lose the ability to help some of those folks who fall in that category because of things like Wi-Fi, which is another cost, and if you can't afford it, and if you're a renter and the age of your home and things like that. So I mean, it's a good program, obviously, but I would just hope that we could think about ways to also make sure that we can provide those opportunities for our low and moderate income customers.
Well, as I said, we were quick to point out to TVA our participation, that we would like them to, for sure, reach out to the KEEM and the rounded up customers that have had their houses insulated to a point where there was value to TVA. We're cognizant of that need and trying, as part of this pilot anyway, to make sure that at least those customers are offered the opportunity.
Is there any kind of study that shows any sort of correlation between lower electric bills and smart thermostats?
Well, clearly the people that sell smart thermostats will give you that stats and you can save money. I can tell you from my personal experience that, being able to schedule the thermostat, and in my case, it knows when I'm not home by following my cell phone. And so when I leave the house, it automatically turns it down. Or if my wife, if both of us are gone, unfortunately, if she's there, it won't turn it down. But if both of us are gone, it will adjust the temperatures in the house. Go to eco kind mode, what they call it. And then when we come back home, as soon as we come back home, it will sense that we're back home. Kick the thermostat back to whatever settings we find comfortable. And then you can program it, from when you expect to be home and away, and so your heating system isn't running all the time. I mean, we got a lot of other things to think about other than, I'm leaving the house, I need to turn down my thermostat, or I'm leaving the house and turn up my thermostat during the summer. So if you can automate that stuff that these devices do, by definition, you're more efficient. And then if you can pile on top of that the idea of using technology to lower the overall demand, lower TVA's cost, lower TVA's investment, then that's benefits to everybody. So. No question? Thank you.
Commissioners, we received an award recently, and we want to make you aware of the details of that award. So I want to introduce Elva Martin, Director of Corporate Services, to give you the details of that award.
Thank you, Mr. Bullis. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Mr. Bullis stated, we recently received an award from the National Organization of Workforce Diversity. This organization is a collaboration between public, private, and nonprofit organizations that focus on advancing diversity and inclusion initiatives. And they have chapters across the United States. Today they have chapters in Memphis, Chattanooga, and Nashville, and they have desire to have a chapter here in Knoxville. And several of you were able to join us at the event last week, and our own Commissioner Small served on as one of the event chairs, and we were happy to have a chance to be there. The actual program was kicked off by Mayor Rogero, who did a wonderful job of sharing the initiatives that she has brought forth during her administration that focus on diversity and inclusion. That was then followed by a very inspirational speech from Dr. Tanja Johnson on the importance of diversity and inclusion. At the event, we had 4 awards that were presented. KUB received the Diversity and Inclusion Award, and as you can see, we were in very good company with Renee Kessler, who is the CEO of the Beck's Cultural Engagement Center. And that center is focused on maintaining and moving forward the African American history and culture in the state of Tennessee. It also recognized Knoxville College and Theodis Robinson, who, amongst the many accomplishments that he has, in 1961 was the first African American to attend the University of Tennessee. We could not have done this without the support of KUB's leadership or the employees who have served on the diversity team over the last 3 years. The focus for that team has run various initiatives, but really focused on increasing diversity in employment. And through that hard work, we've increased our outreach efforts to community organizations and education to broaden our pool so we can bring more diversity into our organization, as well as our continued focus on employee education. And one of our greatest partners through that has been Blue Cross Blue Shield. Some of you had an opportunity back in 2017 to attend the generational diversity presentation given by Ron Harris. And they were actually the ones who nominated us for this award. We have partnered with them over the course of the last couple of years and attended their Power of We conference. We actually had our HR manager attend and serve on the panel. We recognize that diversity and inclusion is not something that just happens. It is intentional. It is not a destination, but a journey. And so we continue to work towards that and work towards having an organization that is inclusive and is reflective of the community that we serve. So we're very happy to have won this very beautiful award. I like to pass it around. It's kind of,
It's pretty heavy.
it's heavy, so be careful. And with that, if y'all have any questions, but we're just very honored to have had this opportunity.
Thank you.
We will now hear from members of the public who have signed up to address the board today. Our procedures allow guests to have up to 5 minutes to make your comments, and there is a light that you will see at the podium when you begin to speak. When there's 1 minute remaining, the yellow light on the podium will go on, and when your time is up, the red light will go on. The first individual that has signed up to speak is Ron Shreves.
Is this a microphone? No. Okay. Usually people are able to hear me just fine. First, I want to thank you for allowing me and others to make comments at this meeting. It's a good opportunity for us. I want to talk to you a little bit about something you're all familiar with to some extent, I know, and it's climate change. The current state of thinking on climate change is it has moved to a characterization as a climate crisis. Recent systematic polling of Americans on their perceptions about climate change has led to some conclusions about trends in those perceptions. I want to quote from an article that was published in February of this year by researchers at Yale and George Mason Universities. And they took polls about every 6 months over a 5-year period from 2013 to 2018, sample size of about 13,000 each time. The percentage of Americans who think climate change is happening has risen over that 5 years from 62% to 73%. The percentage of Americans who are worried about it has risen from 53% to 69%. The percentage that think it's human caused has risen from 47% to 62%. The percentage that think it's important to them personally has gone from 55% to 72%. And those that think they've already experienced the effects of climate change has risen from 33% to 46%. To quote from the article, these trends demonstrate that large changes in public opinion are occurring among Americans across the political spectrum. A growing majority of Americans think that global warming is happening, understand that it's human caused, and are worried about its impacts. Beliefs that are consistent with the findings of the 2018 National Climate Assessment, which found that climate change is already causing harm to communities in every region of the United States. Now, on top of this, from your perspective, we can probably all agree that within the next year, the United States has a pretty high probability, at least substantial, of experiencing a change in federal policy relating to climate. So in terms of challenges that KUB and other utilities will face in the near future, for a long time to come, I think, good luck to you. It's going to be tough. I think it's the game has changed for the foreseeable future. Let me be clear, first of all, that I think KUB has a good record on the environment. The fact that they publish an annual environmental report demonstrates the justified pride in the accomplishments in a range of areas. However, we've entered a new era of environmental stewardship in which strategic thinking by utility companies has been challenged in new ways. Though I'm an average citizen, far from being schooled in the management issues faced on a routine basis in this business, even I can appreciate that climate change has already started to permeate the decision process inside utility companies. Here are a few of the areas in which I believe KUB and other utilities are being challenged. First, in the area of information. Climate change-related information will be necessary to make good strategic decisions. What sort of data and information will be needed? What is the quality assurance for the information? And how will it get integrated into the decision process? New political realities and pressures. If public opinion continues to move in favor of more resources devoted to fighting climate change, which it may do at an exponential rate, as either anecdotal or scientific evidence of climate-caused catastrophes mounts, more and larger demands on utilities will ensue. In the area of new strategic alliances, the human cause element of climate change has created what economists call a public bad. In other words, it's the opposite of a public good. To put it another way, KUB's demand for energy from fossil fuels creates carbon pollution of the atmosphere, which arguably affects the population of the entire planet. Likewise for all utilities. You're not alone. So what's the incentive for any individual utility to unilaterally adopt cleaner energy sources? How will KUB deal with the complications resulting from this fact? I don't have an answer, except that regulation or voluntary alliances with like-minded utility companies and energy suppliers might encourage a greater willingness of alliance members to agree on best practices. This might relate to the long-term contract issue that's coming up.
Mr. Shreve, that's your time.
Okay, well, I have a few other things. New regulation, new and different funding sources, public relations, and social justice issues. These are all additional factors that ought to be considered. I'm sure you've thought about most or all these factors already, but perhaps it's worth these few minutes to let you know that your customers are very concerned about climate change.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Next on our list is Axel Ringa.
Good afternoon, men and women of the board and KUB staff. I'm begging your indulgence here. I'm going to make two unrelated comments, but I will stay well within the 5 minutes on this. The first is that when the litigation was brought against you back in 2003, 2004, I served on the board of the Tennessee Clean Water Network and was part of the plaintiff decisions to bring that case against you. I want to commend you for undertaking what was an enormous task at that time and following through on the consent decree. And I look forward, as you do, I'm sure, to having that consent decree closed out in 2021. So thank you. My other comment, and I'm sure you all have seen this from the city administration, their sustainability plan. TVA is, I would say, pressuring you, and you are considering the virtues or otherwise of the 20-year contract that TVA wants you and the other 154 utilities in their system to sign. The city of Knoxville will not be able to achieve the goals that they have set out in the sustainability plan if you sign that 20-year contract. The 20-year contract will lock you in to TVA's plans to continue expanding the use of natural gas, to minimizing the adoption of renewable energy sources and putting roadblocks in the way of individual utilities such as yourselves of developing renewable energy sources. So I urge you, on behalf of the city's sustainability goals and the residents of the city who believe that we need to make a change in the way we do business in terms of energy, that you reject the 20-year contract proposal by TVA, and I would recommend that you work with the other major utilities in Tennessee, such as Memphis and Chattanooga, who are also considering whether or not they want to sign this contract, and develop some negotiating leverage with TVA to either rescind their proposal or to modify it significantly to allow yourselves considerably more flexibility in how to serve your customers in Knoxville and Knox County. Thank you.
Thank you. Kent Minow?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's nice to be before you again. I'm Kent Minow. I live at 311 West Glenwood Avenue, and I'm addressing you here as the political chair of the Harvey Broom Group of the Tennessee chapter of the Sierra Club. And the letter I'm going to read to you, which you've already received, I think, has been fussed over and vetted not only by the executive committee of the Harvey Broom Group, but the executive committee of the Tennessee chapter as well. So this is Sierra Club Tennessee talking to you here. I gotta do without the glasses, they're stuck in there. The Sierra Club thanks the Knoxville Utilities Board for fully vetting the Tennessee Valley Authority's proposed 20-year rolling contract for local power companies. In our view, the contract unfairly limits KUB's ability to deploy renewable energy resources over the next several decades, a deployment which will be necessary for Knoxville to meet the pledge of carbon emission reductions of 50% by 2030 and 80% by 2050. The incoming administration, Mayor-elect India Kincannon, has already proposed passing even more ambitious clean energy goals. She has plans to create a strong partnership with KUB to achieve them. During the election cycle, the renewed Tennessee Mayoral Energy Forum was well attended and made clear that Knoxville residents and business owners want to energetically address the climate crisis. Knoxville's current success in reducing municipal operations emissions by 20% was realized in part by the retirement of TVA's coal-fired plants over the last decade. Now, if TVA holds to its stated goal of continuing to burn coal until 2038 and possibly deploying 17 gigawatts of gas-fired power, any further success in Knoxville's emission reductions will be difficult, if not impossible. Now, you may be aware that TVA has proposed terminating its green power program, which was the only way homeowners and small businesses could connect rooftop solar systems to the grid at an equitable rate. Instead, TVA wants to support only utility-scale solar installations where they get the savings but charge us full rates, even if the solar facility is in our own community. If TVA is unable or unwilling to move us toward a clean energy future, the possibility remains that KUB could create local policies to deploy both utility scale and distributed energy resources to achieve our city's goals. Now, the proposed 20-year contract, however, will severely limit KUB's ability to contract for and generate its own renewable energy. Therefore, the public's only options are to collaborate with TVA to create new renewable energy, find a method of importing new renewable energy from outside TVA's service area, using TVA's grid, of course, or build renewable resources inside KUB's service area. TVA's attempt to rewrite the local power contracts looks like a move to block local attempts to generate low-cost renewable energy and to block us all into a future of expensive, dirty energy. This would not be just a blow to our health and our local economy, but also to our ability to morally address the climate crisis. Consequently, the Sierra Club's Tennessee chapter is monitoring this issue with other LPCs in the TVA service area. As KUB reviews TVA's proposal, we specifically ask that you consider the following conditions. 1, TVA should raise the limit for locally produced energy to 25%. 2, TVA should grant local power companies a right guaranteed by law in every investor-owned utility in the country, namely the right to use TVA's grid to import renewable energy from providers outside TVA's service area. And 3, TVA should expand its overall renewable energy portfolio. This month's citywide election showed that the people of Knoxville will clearly not stand for a dirty energy future. KUB must similarly defend our right to choose a livable future. We encourage you to work with the Sierra Club and other interested parties to promote energy plans that give our children and grandchildren the clean energy future they deserve and need by not agreeing to sign TVA's proposed 20-year contract until it's been fully vetted by KUB and the public. And thank you for your consideration. So it looks like I went over time. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
You're good.
Thank you, Mr. Nutt. Next is John Coffey.
I hope the board will pardon me using my phone. I'm not texting or being rude. I'm reading my prepared notes on this. I'm here as a representative of the board of Narrow Ridge Earth Literacy Center in Granger County, Tennessee. And even though we're based in Washburn, Tennessee, we have members who, many of our community members live and purchase electricity from KUB. And I am just here to echo the concerns and highlight and underscore the concerns underlined by the members of the Sierra Club. And I had come with some prepared comments in one area, but as I've sat here listening to conversations about proposed budgets and proposed resolutions and things like that, I think I want to take a little bit different approach. In the comments and questions that the members of the board have asked, it's abundantly clear that you make your decisions with very much an eye and a heart towards how your decisions will impact your customers, particularly those who are most affected by the decisions, especially in maybe underprivileged communities and things like that. I want to thank you on behalf of Narrow Ridge for not signing the 20-year contract, keeping our options open. I think when you keep your options open for allowing different members of the community to opt into more sustainable opportunities and keeping those options open, you allow for a more diverse and a more sustainable approach to addressing the problems of climate change. So you keep the options open for all of your customers. It benefits all of your customers. So I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I just want to thank KUB for that heart that I've seen here at this meeting today. Again, to highlight the concerns brought forward by the Sierra Club and to underscore that the community is concerned about climate change, and we want to encourage KUB to continue to consider how that is impacting your community here. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Following the adjournment of this meeting, the board will have a lunch session across the hall that is open for the public to observe. This meeting is now adjourned.